that Steve is from Maryland, and Steve on August 12th of 2018, Steve suffered a drop-dead heart attack alongside an ischemic stroke, and then fell down the steps and broke his neck. Wow. Revived through CPR at his home. He remembers waking to himself aspiring and being very combative for a few seconds before realizing that he had indeed called this help and that they were here assisting him, trying to save his life. He's got a lot more to say, and with that, I will just allow him to be more detailed in sharing his experience. So Steve, go ahead, and then there'll be people wanting to ask you questions afterwards, okay? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely. Good basic introduction there, and I appreciate it, and thank you all for the warm welcome. I already feel just more centered knowing I'm with others that are at the very least curious about this phenomena, as well as those that have experienced it in the group here also. And I have had some minor heart diagnoses over the years, had a problem with my heart racing off and on, and I totally believe stopping and then restarting in the past. There's been a number of episodes, but needless to say, none of those were diagnosed. Holter monitor didn't catch any of those things in my past. So to make a just basic background there, it was Friday night, August 10th, and I had gone down to the theater where I serve on the board of members, and we had an Embassy Theater Legends production, which is people impersonating famous singers. And I really sat up in the office most of the time with a headache and just generally didn't feel well whatsoever. No energy. And I'm not one that suffers headaches it's rare that I get anything that's like, I've never had a migraine. I don't get debilitating headaches. I might have a headache for a little bit, but anyhow, I sat up there, and then early in the morning, so now we're into, very early first couple hours of Saturday, about 2 a.m. after midnight, of course. It's Saturday morning now, and I'm walking home. So that's on the 11th. And then it was, I think, sometime around 2 o'clock a.m. Sunday, where my medical event really, where I knew that this was dire. I walked home the night that I left the theater, and it's definitely at least a mile. It could be a mile and a half to upwards of 2 miles, but I think it's closer to about a mile and a quarter, something like that. And but it's all uphill. I live at the top of a hill or top of a mountain, and it was a good steep hike, and I already hadn't felt well. But I honestly thought, like, being out, getting some fresh air, moving a little bit. I didn't walk fast, but I think when I got home, I felt so poorly that I took a shower, and then I think I stumbled out of the shower and just somehow made it upstairs to bed, and then I don't really remember much of anything for the next day. I did have a neighbor come over, but that was like, well, it was interesting. Like, I spoke to him after I returned from the hospital, after my medical event. And I said, "Hey, did you come, like, visit me over the weekend or something?" I said, "I kind of seem like I have a recollection of that, but it's more like a dream or something, And he said, "Yeah, I came by. We hung out together for a little while." And so I think that was, it had to be Saturday. But I don't remember anything else from Saturday. Could be just because of all the trauma I went through, and that I had a stroke and the drop-dead heart attack and everything. But there's other things that are crystal clear, and very clear, if not crystal clear. And so to make a long story short, with that little bit of background, so I wasn't feeling well, and what I believe happened is I woke up and knew I wasn't feeling well, and looking around my bedroom, my master bedroom where I was almost like a kaleidoscope, I could put my finger out. For example, when I dialed the phone, I put my index finger out to dial my cell phone, smartphone, and it looked like I had 7 or 8, index fingers. And I noticed that at least it lined up with the number that it was supposed to, all of them lined up with the number that they were supposed to. So I just, picked one finger of all those that I saw and just dialed. So I got a hold of 911 and I told them while I'm talking on the phone that I couldn't, I could feel my pulse, but it was erratic, very weak. And then there was one point when I was trying to explain all these things to the woman that answered, that I told her I don't have a pulse now. I clearly remember that. So I believe I hung up and waited and then called them back. Or I could have dropped my phone. I don't know why. I'm pretty sure I called them back. And I do remember feeling like I don't want to be here waiting for the ambulance by myself and not talking to somebody. And that's probably actually why I called her back. Probably just so I would have, some kind of camaraderie with somebody. So I think keeping our minds stimulated certainly doesn't hurt as long as we're not getting overly anxious. And I became certified to scuba dive when I was either 15 or 16 years old. And the main thing they emphasized in that class every day, and every class over and over, was no matter what, don't panic. And it just kept ringing in my mind to not panic. And, I told the 911 operator to make sure that I said, please make sure you tell the ambulance to bring the defibrillator in my house. They have permission to smash my door down if I don't answer it. So we talked, and I decided, see, I do remember him being at the house because there was another time he left my door unlocked and I was very mad at him, and then he didn't come visit me for about a month and a half because I yelled at my friend Matt. And he had left, and I thought for sure there's no way he left the door unlocked. I actually clearly remember him telling him, please do not lock the door. And I just thought for sure after what had happened in the past. This is funny because this is just kind of coming back to me now. I'd asked him to, please leave the door unlocked, which was the complete opposite of what my typical policy is with my house. And anyway, I thought for sure he would have left it locked. And I told the 911 operator that I was going to go down the steps. And she said, please don't go down the steps, Mr. Swygert. So it was at the top of the steps where I had my actual drop dead heart attack. And I remember just falling forward almost like, I don't want to say like the falling forward part was in a dream, but it was almost like I'm conscious. I know what's happening. And then like halfway into the fall, I'm off in dreamland. My house has steps that go down and then turn at a right angle. So if you imagine they go down and they get to the right, the straight ahead is a plaster. My house is double brick with plaster walls. And I'm sure I hit face first into that wall. And the crazy thing was I think I must have gotten up and laid down on the floor, or I just ended up rolling down the steps, hit the wall, and then rolled down the additional 2 or 3 steps to the right angle. And then I was on my hardwood floor. I woke up on my hardwood floor. And keep in mind, I've already had the drop dead heart attack at this point. I had my neck bent, and this still hurts today. I still have dislocated vertebrae. I had my neck bent over like this, but it was floppy, and I was screaming in pain. And I couldn't move my left arm and hand. I could move my hand, but I couldn't move my arm. So I took my right arm and pushed my left hand over because I thought for sure there was going to be bone protruding and blood, and there was nothing, to my amazement. And I knew that this sounds so crazy, and it's still honestly a little traumatizing to kind of go through some of this stuff and remember it all. My neck hurts every day, and just sometimes talking about this stuff makes it amplified a little bit, you know. I sat on my hardwood floor, and you know, by having felt where that was, I had a general idea of where my neck was broken, and I slammed my neck into my hardwood floor as hard as I could. So I'm sitting on my butt on the, excuse my language, sitting on my butt on the hardwood floor, and I slam back as hard as I can to that part that sticks out my back like this instead of straight. And I did that 3 times, and after the third time, uh, my next thing is I'm waking up to, I believe it was 2 men giving me CPR. And I believe I was in my uh, dining room floor when that happened. So I'm home. I remember aspirating right into their faces. I remember them being kind of mad because it was just like a spray at this unbelievable amount of pressure. And then I kind of remember like they were thankful too, because I'm at least alive at this point. And that was extremely combative. Just, you know, like, I don't know, it felt like no more than 3 seconds, probably just a half second or a second, but really like, you know, cursing and get the F off me and did it. I wrestled and played football, and I can get fired up pretty easy, you know. And anyway, I immediately calmed and apologized to them, said, thank you so much for helping me. I said, you know, I can't die. I can't die. I've got so much that I want to do. And I told the 911 operator too that there's this woman that I'm in love with. She's my best friend, and I've been in love with her for a long time. And uh, I won't get into that much, but we did spend a good 20 months together. She was in a terrible car accident and ended up breaking her back. Had to learn how to walk again and use her hands again. And it was shortly after that she was home. About, I guess, about a year and a half after my event, then she went through that. And then we spent the next 20 months together as a couple. And I'm very thankful that I was able to come back, and she's like an angel on earth to me. It gave me just the desire, the love that I had for her really gave me a strong desire to want to survive. And then my dogs, I thought about like my dogs and her and then my dogs. And I remember, so I'm combative and then aspirate. I mean, I'm aspirating and then I'm combative, and it seems like I remember them putting me on I don't want to say a stretcher, more like one of those medical beds that scissors up and down electrically. Could be completely wrong. Could have been something else entirely different, but it seems like that happened. And then they took me out of my house, and where my door is, I have 2 doors. If you're looking at my house on the right side, I have 2 doors, one towards the front and one towards the back of the house. I use the door on the back of the house. It's not on the back, it's on the side, but the one furthest from the sidewalk. And it's very narrow there, probably the side, it's only sidewalk, no yard on that side. And it goes down to the steps there go down to the sidewalk. And I really think I remember them just about dumping me over in the neighbor's yard, because it's a tricky place to maneuver. And I'm sure that everything, you know, me being dead weight and being in that bed, and the weight of one of those beds, if it is indeed the bed I recall. Anyway, I remember them dumping me over almost. And now the next thing I remember is I'm above the ambulance, and we're driving down the road to the hospital, and I know my dead body's inside of that ambulance. And I almost felt like I don't want to say like I was flapping like a bird, but I felt like I was flying like a bird that would be following a car. And I couldn't, I could see, like, you know, the people inside, but I couldn't see everybody clearly. It's just like anybody would look through the back windows of the ambulance. But that was I'm like, wow, I'm dead. And let me go back when I went down the steps, and before they revived me the first time, the very first instance of any memory uh, was that's more near death experience as opposed to physical, what I really went through uh, in the physical realm that we would all understand. I was just very temporarily in a place of blackness, and I absolutely knew I was dead. And that's when I thought about uh, my sweet friend that I love so much, and my dogs, and that I've got to come back. I can't die. It's just absolutely so many goals and dreams. And uh, then then the next thing of the near death experience part is I'm above the ambulance. Um, and so that's two times that my heart has completely stopped again, and they're giving me CPR in the ambulance. And then I get to the hospital, and I do remember being defibrillated at the hospital 3 times. I believe I was revived in the ambulance or very shortly after, but then lost again at the hospital. And I really distinctly remember being defibrillated 3 times. It could have been more. It could have been no more times at the hospital, but I definitely remember it. I remember feeling like my whole body was a cramp, and I wish they would just stop it and let me catch my breath for a second. It sounds kind of crazy, but like everything just so tight, and you can't fight that kind of a jolt. And and they worked on me, giving me CPR, and it's at that point where I'm now out of my body in the hospital. I'm looking at myself lying on the bed supine, and and I just decided I'm going to go as far as I can until I come back into the void, into the death world. And I didn't articulate that very well. Sorry, but I, when I was first in that place of blackness after falling down the steps, I knew that I absolutely didn't want to die, and I felt assured almost immediately upon those thoughts that I am definitely coming back. So I wanted to go as far as I could into the near death experience as possible, and hope to remember it all. There's I just know, looking back at everything now, it's amazing what I do recall. I just know that there's so much better content from that experience that I can't recall and really wish I could. Uh, Things happen so fast. So um, when I'm defibrillated all these times, the medical team's working on me. I can see the medical team working on me, and then it's off into heaven. And and I'll talk about that after just briefly saying what was kind of interesting uh, before. Uh, I'm in heaven, but there's one point in this where I see the medical team working on me, and they finally have to stop and declare my death. And it was interesting from a point of view. It was like, if you're with a lot of positive people, everybody kind of, that energy rubs off of each other. And when there's, the Debbie Downer walks into the room, people just, we feel that kind of negativity. It was like when they knew they could not save me and they quit, it felt like all the positivity in that room just was vanquished in an absolute instant. And I don't want to say they felt like failures, but you could clearly see the disappointment, feel the disappointment. And that was an amazing thing, because there was more people in that room than I could keep track of. After, like, before I came back, um, so I'm laying on the hospital bed in the hospital. I'm laying down supine. back to the bed and looking up. And after everybody on that medical team that had been working on me leaves, a nurse is immediately to my left and down by my feet, and a doctor is immediately to my right and up beyond my head. And so they're working. I don't know if they're taking notes, cleaning up their stations where they were or what, but they decided to stay in the room, and they were awaiting a neutral doctor, an unbiased and neutral doctor, to come and call my death. And so then, and I'll explain more about the being in heaven part and everything in just a few minutes, but I kind of want to go over these first. I think, I don't know, the way I'm remembering it right now, it's more poignant to stick with these things that I do want to make sure I say. I knew I was going to come back, and I'm now watching my body. I'm up above my body. I'm looking. It would be like looking down upon yourself while you're, dead in the bed. And I see myself, and I distinctly remember, like, boy, that body, my body's pretty beat up, and that's not an exaggeration, but I can take a whooping, and I knew my body still had a lot of life left in it to give. And I knew that my spirit certainly did. And I again had this reassuredness of, I am coming back 100% for sure. And now at this point I want to, but I don't know how to get back into my body. And instantly I thought, you know what? I've always been really good at talking. I'll just start talking. So the first thing I say is, well, and I promise, like I promised to myself, like I'll say it kind of quietly because I don't want to scare the heck out of these folks. So I said, well, I guess I died. And that nurse turned around so quick, and her eyes were so big. She just completely knocked my phone over. Sorry. She just completely couldn't believe it. And the doctor, she's like, oh my gosh, doctor, what do we do? What do we do? And he said, he's equally shocked, but calmer in mannerism. He's a leader. He's got to be, and he answers, well, so she says, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? Oh my gosh. He says, well, I guess we have a patient again. But you could hear the amazement. Like, these guys knew everything I had gone through, and they still haven't had time to even check on what's going on with my neck or anything. So I also had an ischemic stroke with this event. And just if anybody's interested, I've got 4 pages of medical, just a chart, diagnoses, date, time, and stuff like that. I've got some cervical MRIs. If anybody wants to see those, I'm perfectly fine with sharing them. They're somewhere out on the internet too. I want people to see that I'm not making this stuff up. This is what happened to me. It happened at my hospital here. And I have never spoken to any of the nurses or doctors other than my cardiologist, Dr. Judson. I believe it was Dr. Judson that was there when I came back. I'm not 100% sure about that. I don't remember everybody's faces. Like, I could not tell you. I was looking right at that nurse's face when I said, well, I guess I died, but I do not remember what she looked like whatsoever. Maybe I'll see her one day and go, hey, are you a nurse at the hospital? And then I'll realize, but right now, no recollection. And, it's just all still so difficult to believe each and every day I wake up that I went through all this. It kind of leaves me at a loss of words for a second right now. I lose my composure a little bit in my train of thought just because it's awesome, but it's traumatic too. I get emotional a lot talking about these things. So again, I had the drop dead heart attack. So I have something called Takotsubo syndrome. And that's what a drop dead heart attack is. When you see, let's say, a soccer player or a basketball player, and they're, fine athletes in great shape, and they're running down the court or, kicking the soccer ball down the field, and they just drop dead. That's the kind of heart attack I had. Mine had symptoms before it, but that's what it was diagnosed as. And they can tell by the EKG readings and things of that nature once they're able to look at everything. In the past, those things, nothing would ever be caught on the Holter monitor or any times that I did the stress test and things of that nature. So I had an ischemic stroke. I broke my neck. I still have 3 vertebrae dislocated here. I think it's 3, 4, and 5, or 2, 3, and 4 that are still sublated, is what they say medically. And I also had asthma, viral sepsis. I can't remember. There's so many things that each individually should have left me dead in the medical scientific sense. Much less to have endured them all at the same time. And those medical records I talked about, it shows each one of these things very clearly, what my diagnoses were for that day. So this happened August 12th, 2018. And 3 days later, I had my pacemaker defibrillator implanted. And 2 days after that, I went home. I had a home care nurse come and see me the first 3 days. And she said, "Mr. Swygert, you don't need any help. You're doing absolutely fantastic." And she was in disbelief too, but realizing absolutely I went through all this stuff, but I was in the hospital 5 days. That doesn't even seem like that should be possible, you know? I don't want to say 100% totally miraculous healing because I'm not perfect. I'm far from it. But then again, when you look at everything that happened, it is almost totally 100% miraculous healing because it's just beyond a statistical anomaly that anybody would survive this kind of stuff, you know? So back to, so first I'm on the floor and I'm in this place of blackness, and I think about the lady that I love, my friend, and my pets, and that I can't leave all of them. I got to come back, and then I get that instant reassured feeling of I'm definitely coming back. And then I'm flying over the ambulance, and then I'm in the room watching them work on me, and then it's like, okay, this is time to go as far as I can go and make sure I come back. No matter what, make sure I come back. If I have a choice, I don't know what I'm about to experience. I've never had another near-death experience. This is my first one. And so it seemed like I was going through a wormhole throat. And once in a while, I'll see a movie that's got a pretty good depiction of it. But I've seen like airplanes flying through storms, and the person will say, then there was just like this tube, this hole of swirling clouds. Well, mine was like a kaleidoscope of colors, like electric colors. Beautiful, and I don't want to say like a bright light, like a point of light, but the whole end of that long, twisty, windy tunnel was lit up. And you didn't have to look and see the end to know it was lit up down there. That I could say that the tunnel went like this and did all kinds of shit, but you knew that light was coming from that way, and it was strong, and then and this is funny. My sister said, "Well, what happened?" And I told my sister, I said, "Well," basically explained all that in a nutshell, and said, "And then I was with the great council in the sky." I don't even know where that came from. It was like I knew what to call them, but I felt like that's the presence I was in. I did not see any human shapes, forms, bodies, anything. It was just an absolute, I knew I was in the presence of these individuals, these entities. And I didn't have a life review. I knew immediately, when it says in the Bible, the Holy Bible, that we go naked to the throne of God, I knew 100% immediately that that's exactly how I was. And absolutely, they knew me better than I knew myself. They knew every single detail of all of my life. And it was obvious to me. They could see it like rewinding a video and in looking at it all. Plus, they felt it. Like, that they didn't just witness my life or anybody else's life for that matter, but they felt it. They knew everything. I have felt lonely and alone for a long time, and it's been tough going through a lot of this stuff. It's emotional enough to go through just the medical event itself, but I just haven't felt like I have had wonderful people around me, but I guess nothing's ever like we would hope it would be when it comes to these kind of things. And I don't want to point fingers of blame or anything like that. I guess, these are just part of my lessons I still need to learn. And one thing I'll say, a lot of people say the oldest question of the ages is what is the point of life? What is the meaning of life? And I feel 100% it's about evolving our souls, period, so that we become truly higher beings. So anyway, I went through the kaleidoscope of light, and I knew that I was in the presence of the great council in the sky. And I think the next thing I remember is I was at the edge of now, so I didn't have a life review because I knew they knew me perfectly, and it was like gone. So the next thing I'm in a meadow, on the edge of the meadow where it meets a field, and the field is of just beautiful flowers. And I believe I was listening to music at that point, but it wasn't earthly music at all. And I can't even explain it. And I am a musician too. I don't have words to describe the type of tones I heard. Um, Interestingly, there in heaven, I was standing with my lady. So we were in our light bodies, which for me personally, in that place of heaven, at this point, I experienced the same body I have now, no pain. Uh, like how if you felt good in youth, that kind of feeling. And she was with me, and she's not dead. So I thought that was amazing. Um, we were looking across the field of flowers, which just kind of very gently waving in the wind back and forth. Nice soft breeze. I could feel the heat of the sunshine. And there was a castle way off in the distance, and it was like, and that was our castle. And that was pretty much the end of that segment. I'm trying to think what else. I told you that when I came back, I wasn't really sure how to get back into my body. Oh, one thing, actually, when I went into the wormhole throat, the very first thing I remember actually is like launching into that. I was out of my body so fast and launching through that, but it was like when you drive a car and you leave from a red light where you've been at a stop and you gradually accelerate up to whatever your cruising speed is that you desire. It felt like launching. If you've all been on an airplane, you start going down the runway and you kind of feel like, wow, this is, pretty smooth in this, and then all of a sudden you feel that thrust. I felt like I was getting launched off into, space. And I remember of all things, I've always been amazed with the pyramids and, Egyptian archaeology and all kinds of archaeology and historical things of the ancient past, I think are absolutely fascinating. But I remember like flying over the pyramids while they were working on them and constructing them. And it seemed like, this sounds kind of silly, but it almost seems like I saw all of human history on my flight to the Great Council in the sky. There was the kaleidoscope of light and everything, but I don't know if it was like right before getting into that kaleidoscope of light or right after it, but somewhere along that journey, it was like I was watching all that stuff, but it felt like a download too. If if we're studying and we're reading a textbook for a college course, it's going to take a while to read through that book and absorb and assimilate that knowledge and understand it. And, if we were a computer, we could have this information much more quickly. And it felt like that. It felt like I was getting loaded and then overloaded with this information, just more than could possibly be given anybody. And thus, I 100% believe I was dead for about 30 minutes. I have no idea how much time exactly. Um, uh, I don't know how long I was, in the tunnel going towards the light to see all that stuff that I saw, when it seemed like I was watching all of recorded history, but it seemed like launch and then faster and faster and faster and faster. And then boom, I'm at the Great Council in the sky. And like, that was just awe inspiring. Like, wow, it was obvious again when I got to them that they knew everything. You are completely naked for sure in their presence. And I don't know, I feel like I'm skipping around a little bit back and forth. um that's I would say those are the main. I always feel like after I talk about this, I forgot this or I forgot that. It's hard to articulately, coherently share the whole experience. And indeed, in some things I just don't know the order of. That was a big puzzle coming home from the hospital, and I have written a lot of notes, and I might even have 100 pages of writing or more of like what I recall, and and then I started trying to piece things together about what time frame, because maybe I'm watching something on TV, or maybe I'm having a conversation with somebody, and there's just some kind of rather maybe subliminal hint that all of a sudden is like, wow, that, you know what, I remember this part of something, um so there's still just little tidbits of stuff that comes back to me, but nothing any more significant or anything yet. I think, you know, I absolutely believe that we're going to come back here over and over and over again. Go through the process of death, which for me now was something I used to fear. Now I feel like it is the complete and utter freedom that we all actually desire. Of course, we're not supposed to take any shortcuts to get there. We're supposed to live and enjoy this life, and that means embrace the bad too. I know that every storm I've gone through has brought a beautiful sunshine at the end, and life has an even deeper and more quantitative meaning. Uh, if you read any uh, principled religious book, the Bible grows with you. It's the living word. To me, that means that it means something to you when you read it young. And as you get older and you go through experience, you reread those same passages, they still have that first meaning. But as you have evolved, that meaning evolves and changes into deeper, stronger, more powerful meaning. And it will always do that. And it's like there's just more clarity. And I feel that, for me personally, I'll do this as many times as needed until I am a uh, individual that's elevated the soul through experience. And I embraced that. It was awfully traumatic to go through, and that's an understatement. But it's extraordinary, and I embrace all that it's given me. And I never didn't appreciate life. I've always absolutely adored and loved life. And I feel like the main message, if there's a big message behind this for me personally, is it helped me see the meaning of life, to evolve our souls, and to share love, and share and promote love, and share and promote faith. Something about my faith, like I've had a little bit of an inkling of doubt of, like, oh, come on, we can't live these long lives and then nothing. That just doesn't make sense. Everything makes so much sense most of the time. It's like, that doesn't make sense. I always felt like, no, there's definitely something. I was raised a Christian. Not that that's good or bad. Um, I don't want to say I'm not a Christian, uh, but I just have I don't want to say a unique perspective either, but I have an experience now that's different. It didn't teach me anything not Christian, I don't feel. And I don't think religious matters are important in these experiences. I think just sharing and promoting love, and sharing and promoting faith, and not playing into games of division, not trying to be the wedge that does divide, you know, but embracing all the sweetness of life, and all the sour, and all the tough stuff, and really, just growing, but sharing with others through this process, how we can get to a better place while we're here. But we only do that together, you know. Um, and again, I've never not been a thankful person, but I've never been more thankful. And each and every day I wake up, I just, there's this part of me that just still can't believe I went through all that. Because if somebody told me that and I hadn't experienced it, I'd have a really difficult time believing them. And then when I think about, not that it's the only story, but one story most of us are familiar with is Jesus Christ. It's like, could that have happened? You know, I don't think doubt doesn't exist in my mind as it once did. There's a certainty with certain things that have pure, crystal clear clarity now that I didn't before. I am so much more at ease. I do not want to depart anytime soon for heaven. I love this life, and I want to continue sharing all the wonderful and all the bad, the whole kit and caboodle, so to speak. And but I just feel like this certainty now, this left this fear off my shoulders. I don't have to choose to live with that anymore. It's hard to stay centered and focused sometimes. I'm still quite emotional. This definitely gave me PTSD, and I already had PTSD before all of this. And I'm not trying to whine and complain. It's just, as soon as I was here with you all, I felt so much more centered, as opposed to my mind thinking about how is tonight going to go. You know, um, I have met some of the finest people in my life after my experience, and because of it. And even if we have only great people in our lives, we can all use more great people in our lives. And I just, I know that I'm going to think of something later that I didn't share. Um, I feel like the doctors didn't save me. I feel like love and faith saved me. But the doctors, to their credit, 100% carried me through the process of death and kept the body able to host life. And it is absolutely a miracle I'm here multiple times over. I'm not paralyzed. I can use my hands. I go hiking. That's how I broke my elbow. I can work on my cars. Life's not a bowl of cherries, though. financially, it's very difficult. My heart stopped on election day, the presidential election day. Had another episode where, and I was defibrillated on that day by my pacemaker defibrillator unit. There's another time where I've been defibrillated. I must have been asleep because I don't remember it. I would think it would jar me awake if it was anything like the first one that hit me, because wow, I walked into my house and just took a step through the door enough to close the door behind me and then turn back towards my kitchen and start taking the first steps in my house. And I thought somebody hit me in the back of the head with a baseball bat or something. I really didn't know what happened. And then it didn't knock me all the way down. I was on one knee, and then immediately I knew, like, oh, wow. But I couldn't help being overwhelmed with, like, oh, boy, I don't want to go through all this stuff again. I will if it means I get to survive. That's okay. But, it's hard to not panic again. Back to what I said in the beginning, no matter what, stay calm. Have to. And it's tough. I don't know, share and promote love and share and promote faith are just a resounding, underlined, underscored theme. And I'm certainly not perfect at those two topics, but I know I can get better every day. I'm just so thankful for all the people that helped carry me through all of this stuff and still do. It's amazing to have my pets. It was amazing to spend 20 months with the woman that I love. We're not together now, and I miss her dearly, but sometimes we have to move forward in life, and that's okay too. Doesn't mean it's easy. The best things never are. Sorry. I just think it's amazing that we all can share the way we can share today and grow through these experiences. And I see, I don't want to say a revolution, but I see something fascinating happening today. And of course, if you said all of us that went through NDEs were in a box, and all those that didn't have them are on the outside, they don't know what's in the box. I feel like more people are curious about what's in there today. More people are open-minded into believing it. But more importantly, we have lots of wonderful people documenting these experiences, and we have so many incredible things recorded. Like Jack mentioned about Bruce Grayson. I know the University of Virginia, where he is instrumental in all that they have done. And it's amazing to be able to be plugged into people like all of you, you know. So like when I came back and I wasn't quite sure how to come back without alarming them, I'm good at talking. I think I've said what needs to be said, and I just appreciate you all being here tonight. And I hope this can shed light on something that somebody else is questioning right now. I hope it can help anybody that could potentially learn anything whatsoever from it. And if anybody doubts any of this, that's fine. I would call you crazy if you didn't. I just appreciate you all being here tonight, and I wanted to say thank you for the warm welcome and for the wonderful invitation to talk to you all.
Steve, thank you for trusting us with your feelings.
Absolutely.
Does anybody have any questions, please? Questions? Okay. Jack?
Steve, you mentioned in your experience on the other side about bodies of light. Could you elaborate on that, please?
It's hard to, I just know the way we gauge things in our three-dimensional world, as far as, we get attuned to our height. our space, how far we have to reach for something, or you can feel the thickness of a $1 bill versus there's an extra dollar bill there, and hey, I got an extra one there. Hold on, those things all seem present, but I definitely I definitely felt like a body of light, though. I felt perfect for one thing. There was no such thing as pain in that realm whatsoever. I'll
Okay.
tell you. Also, I was instantly relieved when I was gone the last time and flew off. I felt like I don't have to fight anymore. This is the first time I've not been in pain, maybe in my whole life. I felt rejuvenated in ways that an earthly experience doesn't talk about. I mean, share a. There's just no comparison. But anyway, I felt like in my uh, body of light, I felt like those same dimensions were around me as far as, this is how tall I am, this is how big I am. But when I went through the wormhole throat that looked like a kaleidoscope full of colors, I was like those colors too. I don't remember looking at my lady there and thinking, wow, what interesting colors our bodies are, or anything like that. It seemed like normal. And I don't remember any specific communication, but I know we didn't talk using our mouths. I know it was all, we just knew what each other was thinking and saying. And so in the body of light, like we were both in awe of the flowers and how perfect this meadow was that came up to the field, and then total awe of the castle across the way. And we we both knew it was our castle. I feel like eventually we'll be there together one day. It's okay to be patient. Um, I, the body of light, I just felt, I don't know, perfection. I don't know really how to describe it other than that. I mean, I'm sorry it's so vague. It's a tough.
Well, you describe a lot of the feelings of the bodies of light, but can you describe the visual aspects of the bodies of light? How to and put it into our uh, senses and communication abilities? If you were to write down what they look like.
Well, the only person I saw as a body of light was, I believe, the woman I was in love with then. I said, my lady. It was almost like transparent, but luminescing with color too. That's just why, they're kind of things that are almost paradoxical in nature, it seems, which it's just really hard to explain. Um, Again, like if we had been in the physical realm here at the edge of a meadow by the flower, all that felt the same to me.
Okay.
Eh, Otherwise, I'd say our bodies were definitely, like, they were markedly different. We knew they were different, more like they were kind of transparent and luminescing with light is about the best thing I can really say. I knew, like, I looked at her face, but I saw her face the same way that I know her. I don't even know how to explain that. Although I know it was different. I knew it
Okay.
was the same old familiar her too. Kind of, again, paradoxical a good bit. I don't remember talking to anybody in the whole experience of death itself. It was all, when I was at the Great Council on the Sky, I knew, like, I don't know how many beings were there. I knew it was all, I knew it was all that came before me and remained to stay. I knew that for sure.
Okay.
So, countless souls, but I didn't see bodies of light there. Not that I recall. Maybe I did. I just felt like I know where I am. I knew I was in this great, powerful presence that was an all-knowing, all-understanding entity, and entities really beyond a single entity. But there was definitely an entity that was the dominant, not in a
Oh yeah.
bad way, but you know, I don't want to say the leader, but there was just definitely one powerful being with the others. But really, the only time I remember seeing any bodies was my own extremities, you know, like, wow. And then looking at her right on the edge. And it was just that quick. It was like looking down at my hands and then looking over at her. And then we looked across the field. And, oh, you know, one thing that was interesting when I was flying through the wormhole throat, and this is funny that I forgot this. This is one of the important things. So visuals on being in a body of light. At one point, I didn't feel like I was my regular body. I just felt like I was this infinitesimally small point. And a lot of people say they had like 360-degree vision. I had spherical vision. I could see in every direction all the way around my being. I don't want to say my body, but my being all at one time, which was amazing.
Yeah.
It also sounds like something that's impossible to process, but it's not. When you're in that place doing that, it's just as normal as how we look around now. As far as we don't think about it, we take things for granted.
Yeah.
There, it felt more natural than natural, you know. But there, I still feel like I was a body of light or an energy body, but again, I don't think I took up any physical space. I
Oh,
think I was like pure energetic presence at that point,
okay.
and still the all-knowingness feeling, the communication without being able to speak, that was the same. I'm trying to remember. I don't think I saw anybody glowing. I absolutely don't think I saw anybody else. That I'm glad I remembered that part though, because that was something that was quite, again, like in that moment, I was in awe of, like, I'm this now. And I also remember I felt like I could go anywhere I wanted to and be there instantaneously, just with thought. As soon as I thought it, I was there.
Yeah,
Like,
good.
my best friend in high school, we used to talk about all kinds of crazy things. He was like, well, what do you think heaven will be like? And I said, whatever. This funny. I didn't even think about what the question was. What would heaven be like? I don't remember my answer, but I remembered his answer. He said, well, I think it would be like, and keep in mind, this was like 1984, 1985. He had an Apple IIe computer, and I had a Radio Shack or Tandy Model TRS 83. And dad's at the Pentagon. So here, and his dad was Air Force. My dad was Army. So here we are, two kids growing up with computers when most people just didn't even have them. Most adults didn't have them. You know, they were freaking expensive. And I remember him saying, I think heaven will be like we'll be at a computer, but we can rewind and look at any point in time we want from any perspective. And I was like, wow, that sounds pretty cool. Well, it felt like that, amazingly.
What was the landscape like as far as light is concerned?
Well, kind of like going through that tunnel. I don't know, looking across the field and looking, from the edge of the meadow, looking across the field where all the flowers were and looking at the castle, that all seemed like almost as perfectly normal as here. I know that something was different about it. I think everything was kind of, I keep saying luminescing, kind of a glow, an aura maybe, but it wasn't like significant. I do remember like the castle. I think it was glowing kind of golden around it or something. But that's the only thing. Golly, I'm trying to remember when I saw the pyramids, that all looked pretty normal, but they were working on them, like building them. There was lots of people building them.
Oh, really?
I can't think. I don't think I saw people or bodies, and those bodies didn't look like light bodies. I know that. I definitely remember like looking at the people building the pyramid, but this would have been like being in let's say an airplane 200 feet, 300 feet above the ground or something. They were tiny. They weren't dinky, but it wasn't like a clear, but they didn't look like light bodies. I know that too. I felt like they were more regular, you know. I wish I could describe the light bodies better. I can't stop thinking now, like how to explain it better. It almost felt like you could just, you know, put your finger right through your own hand or something, like we're here, but we're not in a physical
Okay.
sense.
Okay.
Um,
And did you at any time experience what other NDEers describe as unconditional love?
yeah, absolutely. As soon as I was there at the Great Council in the Sky, as I call it, I knew not only that they knew everything about me, but that they still loved me in spite of it all. You know, that was incredible. I'm not saying nobody should love me if they knew all the things in my life, like we all have, but you know, that was, you know, I grew up with my dad passed away in May of 2020, and mom passed away in 2014, but they had been married 63 years when mom died first. And I really, truly, my dad went to West Point. Mom was an artist, college educated, and dad was had a master's in mathematics and a master's in engineering, civil engineering, and he was Army Corps of Engineers. And I tell you, I am so fortunate to have the most loving and wonderful parents. That
Mm.
you know, growing up, and then coming to Cumberland was truly culture shock as far as it being polar opposite here, where there's a lot of suffering with lower socioeconomic echelon, and too many children that just don't have parents like I had. And you know, I grew up totally naive, thinking everybody grew up like I did. You know, there was an unconditional love in heaven that was beyond the perfect, loving, unconditional love that my parents gave me, and
And
and theirs was perfect. You know,
and did you meet any of your past relatives?
no, I did not, and that's something I think's interesting, because I do hear a lot of people say that, but I did
Okay.
not.
Yeah.
I do remember, and I told my friend this earlier today. I kind of, this is like a really vague memory, but it seems like I was in one place in heaven where all the dogs were, and they all loved me and came running out of the woods to me. And that sounds kind of silly, but and it was just a brief, fleeting second.
Even the dogs had unconditional
Yeah,
love for you.
yes, it really truly felt like that. Like my dog that I have now, one of the two that I have now, Luna, I raised as a runt. And she's just truly, I've had a lot of dogs. She's the sweetest dog. I've even seen her cry. I mean, and I don't mean from something terrible, like just at appropriate times to
Mm.
cry tears of happiness, or, you know, it's interesting. She's a really different than a lot of my dogs, but it's like all those dogs definitely unconditionally loved me there too. But, you know, I don't know if those moments were like, I left the meadow and then saw dogs, or did I see them, you know, a couple of seconds after I flew over the pyramids? I don't know where that took place. That's one reason why a lot of this is so hard to recall, because you just don't know the perfect time of it. And the thing that, I don't want to say it irks me, but the thing that's very frustrating is that I really wanted to go as deep and far as I could into that experience and bring back everything I could to show others faith. That was the most important thing to me.
Yeah.
And more than the love, because I feel like humanity just doesn't have faith, and it makes me pissed so much sometimes, you know. And I just felt like, well, if I'm gone for a long time and I come back from that, people are going to believe, like, there's faith. You got to have faith. Like, how could you not, if you knew somebody who went through all that? But I don't think it made any difference. But I was gone a long time, and it seems like, I feel like I came back and only remember 0.1% of everything that I went through in the moments of death, for somewhere upwards of 30 minutes, I believe.
Yeah.
It
Have
was
you ever,
not a short period of time.
have you ever considered using hypnosis to recover some of your experiences that you barely remember?
Well, I have a friend that suggested it, and then I had another friend suggest it. Both friends that I met through NDE groups. One man that I've done an interview with, and I would say I'm open-minded to it. I'm not overly enthusiastic about running out and getting it done right away. I
Okay.
kind of felt like my first instinct was I need to let the storm emotionally within me settle first.
Okay.
I really hoped I wouldn't get emotional tonight talking to y'all, but I can't help it. I'm just an emotional person to start with, but kind of reliving all that stuff in my mind that I can't even put words on. It's
Yeah.
absolutely overwhelming
Yeah.
sometimes, and
Yeah. It's
I don't. Sorry.
it's difficult and it takes time, and you'll remember more as in the future. Yeah, yeah, they'll
I
start
agree.
coming back to you, etc. It'll be interesting, an interesting trip. So I won't keep you any longer. I'm sure there are other questions, but thank you
Okay.
very much, Steve. It was
Absolutely, Jack. Yes,
okay.
sir. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Bethany and then two others.
Thank you so much. And Jack, thank you for those questions. And Steve, thanks so much.
Absolutely.
It's just such a journey that you're on, and I really appreciate your sharing. I wondered if there's anything that you've done that has helped you kind of feel more balanced, feel more centered, and better integrate your experience into your life after your near-death experience.
Hmm. Boy, that's a tough one. Can you kind of re-articulate that with some different words, maybe, or give me an
Sure.
example that
Sure.
might?
Yep. A lot of people report that spending more time in nature helps them feel better. They report that sharing their experience with other people who've had near-death experiences also helps. People report that they are also more sensitive to sound, to light, to certain fragrances or cleaning products. They have to be very careful about, like using Clorox bleach or something in their home. So I just wondered if there are things that you found that are helping you better adjust and integrate.
Well, one thing you said, nature. I've always loved nature. Um, I've written all my life too, poetry, short stories. No major things published. I've had things published, but nothing on a, you know. I had an article at the university, university at the United States Department of Energy that was pretty fascinating. That got published. It was not something they asked me to do or anything. It was kind of fascinating that took place. That was 2010. But my point being, writing, working on my cars. But these are things I've already always loved. Talking about it with others that aren't candidly interested in NDEs and or haven't experienced one, I almost feel more shut down about now, unless I see an opportunity to somebody who's open-minded and they might ask, like, I don't know if you can see the line across my neck. It's probably hard to see in here. There's a good line all the way across my neck from how, like a stretch mark from how my neck was jarred back and bent over to the side so much. And so sometimes, oh, what's that? Or, just conversation, something comes up. And so I really just don't speak about it with too many people. I think it happens to a lot of us that it's really sad on one of my Facebook groups. There's a lot of people that go through this, and it's the first place in our group where they feel like they can reach out and communicate with others. And a lot of them just get completely shut down by their own family. Like, don't talk about it again, or you're crazy, or, et cetera, et cetera. that hurts a lot. You know, the medical professionals didn't want to hear anything about it. It was very quick that I shut down talking to them. You did provoke another memory, though. I remembered that I was going to learn all the languages and I was going to be a great artist. One thing that was really bizarre, and that was like part of, I don't know, there were, I wouldn't say they were epiphanies, but they were kind of glimpses of what's to come, maybe. Um, I I could see, I've always had good abstract thinking all my life. I can work on cars. Like I could see engines that I've worked on in my own mind, like, oh, this is where the valves are, this is where the valve springs are, where the retainers go, where the valve seals go, what the head looks like, and et cetera, et cetera. I can see the whole engine in my head. You know, I can't do that with everything, but I can do it with those. And it seems like I could, and so this is, you know, post medical event. The first, I guess it was 2.5 or 3 days, I could really see my thoughts. And it wasn't like a cloud floating out in front of me, which that's more like a vision to me. This was like, and it wasn't superimposed over the physical realm. It's just hard to explain, but I could see him as clear as reality. And again, not in a way that would be like, oh, I was talking to somebody and they weren't really there. I knew they were my thoughts, you know, but it was insane how clear I could see them, absolutely perfectly clear, like I'm looking at your all's faces right now. It was mind-blowing, and I really wanted it to stay. I thought, okay, I could be Matisse, Monet, Picasso. I could be any of them I want to, because all I got to do is paint what I'm looking at. It was just perfect right in front of me, you know. And I can't see things like that. I'm more or less back to normal. Going through a stroke, there has been a couple little memory holes here and there. But all in all, I won't say I came out unscathed, but darn close, you know. And I feel like I'm continually getting better. It was a little difficult to speak sometimes. I definitely got tongue-tied a lot early on, but I didn't mean to get off the subject matter. I'm sorry. I think really my hobbies that I've always loved, I can't really, I'm on the board of directors at a local theater, and I really haven't returned, you know, this is past 4 years now. I really haven't returned down there to doing the things I need to be an honorable board member. I've suggested multiple times that I will happily resign, and that I'm thankful for all the times that I've been afforded down there to have friends, work on different productions and things of that nature. And you know, I have not been asked to resign, though. I don't think, if I gave a letter of resignation, I don't think it would be accepted. And I appreciate that, but I feel within myself that I'm not earning that. But again, I told you I've been my defibrillator has gone off 2 times on me. One I felt, one I didn't. One on the presidential election day. There was a point in I want to say 2000 and I think it was 2020, in the tail end of the summer and early fall. I had shingles, MRSA, staph, and strep all at the same time. I have had just some absolutely ridiculous things even since then. I was in a really bad car wreck April 1st, and that was another like moment. I'm dead. I just knew I'm dead. The airbag went off, but I was probably going 40, maybe 45, and this car pulled directly right in front of us. Didn't yield right away. Ran a stop sign and then was right in front of us. So my front of my car hit the side of their car, and you know, I have 3 vertebrae that are dislocated in my neck right now. Still, I've never had surgery on that, and I thought for sure if anything like this happened, my lady friend that I was in love with that got me, you know, I want to say helped to get me through the NDE because I had to be back for her, you know. I really felt that. And I did help her through her time of healing after her car accident where she broke her back. And I had a wonderful time with her and her family, and I'm always grateful for that time. I felt like if I had gone through anything like she endured, it would absolutely kill me, and break my neck because my neck is absolutely vulnerable right now. But somehow I went through that accident, and my friend that was with me got pretty banged up. And meaning the folks in the ambulance and the witnesses knew she was in the accident. When the folks from the ambulance came and I was talking to them, they're like, "Who are you?" And I said, "I was driving." "What? You were driving the car?" I said, "Yeah, why?" He's like, "You look fine." Like they couldn't believe it. You know, I said, "Well, I'm tough." I didn't know what else to say, but I didn't have a mark on me. I think I had one little place where like the edge of the airbag hit my finger, but somehow no mark. My ribs hurt, my knee hurt, my feet kind of got jammed up and hurt, but you know, no marks somehow, which is pretty amazing. But uh, I think they're the hobbies for getting back to. And sorry, I got so far track. I think the hobbies are the main thing about. For me, it's not just how to deal with it. Writing is always critical for me because the paper doesn't say you're crazy. The paper doesn't say I don't want to hear it or that's ridiculous, or you know, or the keyboard, and they don't talk back to you. They don't roll their eyes when you're telling them, and et cetera, et cetera. You know, not that everybody does, but you know, once you've had a small dose of that, you kind of get shut down to talking towards others, but you get a little bit more discriminatory about who you share with. I'm usually a pretty good empath. I can read people really well, and you know, I kind of have a good idea who to talk to and who not to now, where I didn't have any discretion like that in the beginning. So I didn't even realize that until right now, prompted by your question, honestly. Um, I don't know. I feel like I could probably give you a better answer, but I definitely think, you know, the things you mentioned were important. Nature, I always feel better if I'm out in nature. I I always feel better, not when I'm working on a car, but when it's done. It's sometimes a cuss fest when I'm working on it, but I get the satisfaction out of like, hey, I did that. I fixed it, you know. Um, I love taking things apart and I love repairing things. And, you know, it's been tough because I've been sick of dealing with this off and on for so long, way before my medical event, that I've not been able to do all the things I aspired to. So I'm so happy I can work on cars still, you know. And I did a lot of work the first couple of years and I stayed pretty immersed into that. I'm sitting in my RV outside right now, and that's been my long-term project, and I haven't started it yet, but on purpose. I'm hoping to do that probably in the next 2 or 3 years, and then I hope to come visit everybody.
David
But
and then Greg.
Thank you.
Steve, I just want to tell you, thank you so much for sharing your testimony. You know, I've never had an NDE myself, but the brave people like you have shared your testimonies, really transformed my life in a positive way. And I have no words of gratitude. So first of all, thank you for that. You mentioned how hurtful it is when people don't believe your story. I've been researching NDEs now for about a fourth of my life, about 14 years. I've heard over 1,000, interviewed many people. And let me just be the flip side of that coin. There was nothing you said that sounded at all crazy to me. Many of the things I heard before, and I believe you 100%. I have zero doubt. In fact, the people I've interviewed have told me, you know, the experience was the most real thing they've ever experienced. They felt more real, more alive than they've ever felt in their lives. And so I just appreciate everything you said. Quick question for you. I just wanted to make sure I understood this correctly in your testimony. You said your lady friend, you saw her in heaven while she was alive on earth.
yes, sir.
Okay, so I have an interesting theory about that. I've heard other near-death experiencers, probably about a dozen, that the same thing happened. And I was very confused at first. And then one of them, it was a 6-hour interview. And the guy was a spirit guide in heaven. And he says, well, I want to show you somebody. And of course, they have to give us a visual representation that we'll understand. Like Jack was saying, you got to put it in terms that the human being will understand. And he saw this giant, powerful, muscular, glowing being of just holiness and beauty. And he said, is that God? And the spirit guide said, no, that's you. That's your higher self. So apparently we're so big and we have so much energy that only a portion separates and comes down here. And most of us is still on the other side of the veil. So that's just a theory from what I've heard from NDE testimonies.
I think that's pretty incredible. And thank you. I appreciate you personally doing your due diligence and hearing and reading about, as you said, 1,000 or more stories. And I appreciate your kind words very much. And I'm going to give what you said there some thought. I think that's an interesting perspective on that, because it has been a question in my mind, like, why, I know why she was there in part, but I can't say I did in whole, if that makes sense. You did say glowing bodies, and I know I said, like, looking at the castle, it had an aura around it. I think everything kind of had an aura. When it came back to, like, I didn't see the woods behind me. We were at the edge of the meadow. I mean, at the edge of the woods. But I knew we were at the edge of the woods. And then looking across the meadow with flowers, or field with flowers. But it seemed like everything was, again, luminescing, I say, but kind of aura-like. Not all gold. Some just the color of what they were. Excuse me. And anyhow, I appreciate that very much. And I hope you don't have the trauma of an NDE. But if something happens, I hope you come back.
Well, I think I don't have to. I've learned much of what I need to know from you guys who have shared. And now when you mentioned the colors, did you see colors that don't exist in this world? That's been very common in my testimonies.
Well, I've kind of thought the colors and the music didn't, the music 100% was completely unique and foreign to anything I've ever heard. And the colors, some were unworldly or otherworldly, and then some were relatively normal. It seemed like things were, again, just luminescing. Like, it's really hard to explain. It would be like if all of space-time was atoms we could see, and each atom would glow, and each had their own unique color, but we could see through them at the same time. So they're just luminescing. They're just, emitting energetic light in their own color. Kind of seemed like everything was like that. It not all the time either, though. It's, that's one thing that was interesting. There was the only consistency in the whole thing was the overwhelming feeling of unconditional love and the utter peace. Like I would say within. I'm sure throughout the whole experience in awe of not being in pain. I've suffered with, I have spinal stenosis, ankylosing spondylitis, and spondylosis. I've got 2 torn rotator cuffs. This shoulder needs to have a chromioplasty performed on it, like this one did. Now I busted my elbow, but I could go on and on. I have ridiculous things wrong with me. It's amazing I'm functional, but the colors, even the kaleidoscope part of the wormhole throat was that same kind of transparent, luminescing. The colors are almost electric, is how I would describe them. Not neon, but almost. I mean, actually, a neon light sign. If you think of a neon light sign, that's probably the closest thing. I'm gonna have to see if I can find some kind of computer software to take some different glowing shots of neon lights and mix them all up and then give them a kaleidoscope effect or something. And I said earlier somewhere along the way that oftentimes I'll watch a movie and, oh, that looks familiar, so there's a couple things out there that are close, but I've never seen anything just like it. Just that's about the best I can. I write quite a bit, so I'm in shock of myself when I'm at a loss of words. Honestly, it's just so ridiculously hard to describe some of it. Just illuminating, fluorescing points of energetic light.
Their
Hard to say
brilliance
myself.
is magnified. Yes.
And what was that?
Very brilliant and magnified.
Yes,
That's how I
absolutely.
remember them. Yeah.
I would definitely agree with that too. There's
Steve, you
Greg,
say you have
experiences in
I'm
life.
sorry.
I've
David,
had some
I'm sorry. You had another question before I go to Greg?
No, I was just going to say, Steve, you said you have difficulty describing it, but I've heard over 1,000 NDEs, and that was the best description of the colors that I've heard yet. So thank you for that.
And I don't want to be offensive to anybody, but I see some nice artwork behind you, and I've had some experiences that made me see stuff like that in real life. So without getting any more specific, that kind of visuals have been the closest thing at all. I mean, and some of that was very similar. I would say if anybody wanted to experience what those colors look like in heaven, then that other realm that you do here in the physical realm that
On a
might give
psychedelic?
you visual, yes, that might give you visual effect would be pretty, when they implanted this defibrillator pacemaker unit, I was given fentanyl, ketamine, and propanol, the medication that unfortunately killed Michael Jackson. But I was given a combination of those three things, and that launched me into a quite similar realm, but abundantly different too. A different thing to talk about there, but pretty close in some aspects. I don't want to get into a bunch of pharmacology, but I find it, scientifically and chemically very fascinating. My own experiences there have been quite fascinating, but it's never anything I recommend to anybody. There's, I'd say proper ways of going about educating yourself through due diligence and being with a community of friends that's supportive in the proper ways to ensure safety, period. And I don't want to talk any more about all that kind of stuff because I think it's a touchy. I'm not, I don't want to be offensive, but I also don't want to be one that's not going to say what's on my mind too. I think just those colors, the closest thing is definitely psychedelics, and still not quite the same.
Okay, Greg, you still there?
Hi. Yeah. Oh,
Hi.
hey. Sorry, that's my son in the background.
No problem.
I think it's Dave, the last person who asked questions. That's your name. Your name here is God Took My Clothes, but so you kind of stole the words out of my mouth about the higher self theory. But I want to take a step further, actually, just a couple of comments regarding that. My understanding, and I too am not a non-experiencer, but my understanding is that time is not existence, which means it is quite possible to be in two places at once. Did she actually recollect this encounter or no? Yeah,
No.
so still be on this side of the veil. And the other thing about the colors and sounds is that the human ear and eye are limited to certain frequencies. Everything's a frequency, and there's
Yes.
sound. The human ears, I know, can hear between. This is if you're an infant, so most of us don't have hearing this high up, but like 20,000 cycles, which is 20,000 vibrations a second, is the highest we can hear. Your dog can hear higher, which is why you have whistles, and then
Right.
lower than that is 20 cycles a second. So You know, I don't know what the spectrum is for light, but there's a lot of light out there we cannot see. I mean, ultraviolet, I think, is one of them.
Yep.
Or infrared, I should say, which is how they're able to do like the cameras at night. You know, as they
Night
shine
vision. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Absolutely.
night vision cameras. Yeah.
Yeah, we see a very narrow window of the actual available light. Very, very narrow window.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, it's funny. Like, my son, who's 5 now, I can tell he sees things. You know,
Neat.
and I used to see things too until I was told it was all my imagination. And then I still see things, but I just, you know, don't talk about it as frequently with people. You know, yeah, I see things. I saw things with you. I was with you when I saw things.
I thought this was whatever. Just
That's my wife.
I had one person in particular in my life that I have witnessed some amazing things with that are absolutely paranormal, and it happened with her a lot. An ex-girlfriend. I'm a Capricorn, she's a Cancer. I really think that has a lot to do with it. But the ranges of like light that we're able to see, you're right. It is a very minute spectrum that we are able to view of what's actually physically around us, which is quite fascinating. But I absolutely think that lends to this. I love physics too, and I'm not a physicist, but I love to read about physics all the time. And I think you nailed the head right there. You know, right on the point. Very interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know,
Greg, I like that theory, and I'm gonna use that if I can. I think the spiritual eyes might be seeing the entire electromagnetic frequency instead of a little sliver of visible light. Right? It's an awesome theory.
Yeah,
I
most definitely. Another theory also about the whole time non-existence and higher self and all that is this what we're experiencing here is kind of like I guess it's sort of a choose your own adventure book, but we're kind of like experiencing, like, my consciousness now is like Greg here in Massachusetts on a camera talking to you and what I did earlier today. But there's another Greg who's kind of watching this whole thing unfold, I think, and enjoying it and getting the experience you can't get when you aren't behind the veil. And you know, that's just another idea of that. And that's my son.
Physics really shows some, you know, like mathematical physics absolutely shows some absolutely fascinating facts that we have figured are facts. And then some other things theoretically that are absolutely mind-blowing. But like, it's totally slipped my mind. What is it where this and this are connected, you know, across the whole universe?
Quantum entanglement?
Yes, quantum entanglement is an absolutely fascinating topic. And lastly, I watched, is it David Icke or Ike?
I think it's David Icke.
Because who would want to be called Icke? So David Icke is on an interview with London Real, YouTube. That's the guy's YouTube name, London Real, REAL. And he talked about that visible spectrum and the other, what he believes there is. And if anybody wants to watch that, I highly recommend it. If you are open-minded. And my ex-father-in-law was a physicist. Is a physicist. He ran the it was called the CAA, the Center for Army Analysis. He was the youngest SES ever. Still holds that record. Last I knew. And funny story. One day and I hope this is okay to talk about for another sec. We had our family birthday dinners, and he would make pizza. And we were eating the pizzas, and he had maybe 2 or 3 Sam Adams. And this was at the time that the cult in California committed suicide and said they were on the tail of the Hale-Bopp comet now. And I don't know if everybody remembers that, but it's easy enough to look up. So he looks at everybody. He says, I got a question. And I would always, he did these things often. I would always wait for his son to answer before I gave any answer at all. And he asked, well, what do you think about that cult in California? Are they on the comet's tail? And everybody looked at him like he completely lost his mind. And I said, well, I have to be open-minded enough to say it's possible if I can't prove it's not. And he looked at me with those silver dollar eyes. That is exactly verbatim what I was thinking. He couldn't believe it. I mean, I could tell it was like the same time he was thinking it. You know, it was ridiculous. And that happened to us a couple times, but he was a fascinating guy. But the point is, he's a physicist. I don't think he was entertaining that question for real. He was only trying to give a simple lesson of if you can't prove something isn't or is, you have to be open-minded enough about the other side of that. And without, you know, it's amazing. I mean, we can all look back at ourselves a few years ago and see where we're closed-minded. And as we grow, we change. I think being open-minded is an amazing thing. And I love, Greg, what you said about those things in physics. Really, I mean, I think physics holds a lot of great answers. Well, like, I believe NDE is going to get explained in the physical realm with scientific data by Neuralink. That has been what I've been saying for a while now. I absolutely think that that there will be some kind of activity recorded or not, one way or the other. That's going to be definitive, though. But anyway, I think the future for physics and what's happening with NDEs are definitely going to be interesting with the things that we all learn. And what humanity can learn is what I hope, of course. Hopefully a healing and an embracing of it's a shame that we have a society that fears death when we really should learn to embrace it. I believe, and I didn't believe that just a few years ago. I do still fear death. I love life. I don't, you know, I fear the trauma of what I went through. I don't ever want to go through that again, but I absolutely look forward to going when it's my time, but not a moment too soon. And I hope not for a really long time. I do love life. I adore it. You know, but
That is wonderful.
great points.
Thank you very much for your sharing. And just to know that as soon as Bethany prepares the video, it'll be placed on our website if you want to check it. Okay, we'll let you know when it's on.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Have a good night. Bye now.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank
you all.
Bye-bye.